players wait for the game to come to them, Gavi sprints straight at it, eyes up, shoulders squared, as if the ball and the moment owe him nothing, and he prefers it that way. That streak didn't appear out of thin air. He grew up in the heat and dust of Los Palacios y Villafranca in Andalusia, where kids learn early that space is something you take, not something you're given. At Real Betis's academy, he piled up goals in bunches, the kind of numbers people pass around with a grin more than 90 in a season as a boy, because they hint at something raw and restless. Barcelona saw it, brought him to La Masia at 11, and found a kid who never hid, even against older, bigger boys. When he reached the first team in 2021, the club was in a strange, fragile moment. Messi had just left, the finances were tight, and Camp Nou felt like a grand stage dimmed by worry. Ronald Koeman needed energy, and in pre-season friendlies, this teenager kept crashing through midfield lines like a gust that wouldn't stop. He made his La Liga debut at 17, then stepped into the ball-worn boots of Spain a few weeks later, and you could feel the risk and the promise sitting side by side. San Siro, October 2021, Nations League semi-final. Youngest Spain debutant ever in a competitive game, and he's facing an Italy that hadn't lost in ages, with Verratti and Jorginho waiting to pull him into deep water. Instead, he waded straight in. He pressed on the front foot, snapped into tackles, turned under pressure and kept asking for the ball, as if the noise and the shirts and the weight on his back were just details to sort through. That night said something simple and important. His confidence isn't a pose. It's the muscle memory of years of stepping into hard places and deciding that's where he belongs. Back in Barcelona blue and red, he made himself useful in all the ways that feel old-fashioned and essential. He ran, not just long distances, but at the right times, snapping traps on fullbacks, closing the inside lane, setting a tone the cameras rarely linger on, but teammates always feel. There were plenty of yellow cards, too many for some, and more than a little needle in duels that turned personal. Critics called it rash. Teammates called it a spark. And then came a night that put a stamp on it. Supercopa de España, January the 2023, a Clásico with pride and proof on the line, Real Madrid across the way. Gavi darted into the half space, gathered the ball, guided it low past Courtois, and later threaded an assist with the same calm a striker wears at 30. Internationally, he carried the same certainty onto the grandest stage. At the 2022 World Cup, Spain's first game against Costa Rica turned into a clinic, and Gavi stepped into a bouncing pass at the edge of the box, caught it clean, and sent it kissing in off the post. Youngest Spanish scorer at a World Cup, youngest since Pelé to hit one on that stage, and he celebrated without a hint of shrinking from the moment. For a team searching for a new voice, that goal felt like a sentence said out loud. Recognition followed quickly. The Copa Trophy and the Golden Boy in 2022 weren't just awards, they were signposts that the wider game understood what Barcelona and Spain were building around. Yet, even as the accolades piled up, the conversation around him kept circling back to the edge in his play. He was everywhere, contesting, intercepting, buzzing into zones he had no right to reach so fast. The line between necessary aggression and needless risk is thin, and he was living on it. And then, in November 2023, the game asked its hardest question: Spain versus Georgia, a qualifying match that should have been routine, and he planted to take a ball on the turn. The knee went, the roar fell into a hush, and as he tried to take a step, you could see the truth arrive in his face before the stretcher did. An ACL tear is a thief that steals not just months but rhythm, the thing a player like him lives by. What remains, even with the sound of gym machines replacing stadium noise, is the root of his story. Confidence and aggression, for him, aren't ornaments they pin on a highlight reel. They're habits, hammered into shape, from Andalusian dust to San Siro lights, shaped by the belief that the ball rewards the brave, The next chapters will test that belief in a different way, but the pattern is set. He doesn't wait for the game to come to him. He goes and finds it. The first victory didn't look like a sprint or a tackle. It looked like waking up before the alarm, crutching to the clinic, and putting the repaired knee under a lamp without complaint. Confidence isn't loud in those rooms. It's the quiet belief that today's small gain will be there again tomorrow, and that you can stack enough of them to build a season. By the time the new year turned, he carried himself with a kind of stern joy, a belief that the game would bend if he kept leaning on it. The Spanish Super Cup final in Riyadh made that belief visible to everyone. In a match thick with history and doubt, he arrived in the box at the perfect moment and finished with the calm of someone who'd seen the shot in his head a dozen times. Then he slipped 2 measured passes for teammates to score, each one colder than the last, and by the end he was walking off with the award in his hands and a look that said he'd expected it.